We've already looked at the general shape of a short-run aggregate supply curve in another video, and we found that as the overall price level rises, that there will be a tendency for aggregate supply of goods and services in the economy to increase. Now, I want to reemphasize something that I've mentioned earlier, that this price level and this GDP is not the same thing as the supply of a particular good, where you've got the price of the good, price of, say, wheat, and the quantity supplied of wheat along the horizontal axis. That's for one particular good. This is for the economy as a whole. So it's a much broader view of this relationship of the price level as a whole, GDP as a whole. Okay, so we talked about the shape of the short-run aggregate supply curve. Now I want to talk about something that will shift that curve altogether. And there are at least four that one can readily talk about. One is changes in the labor force. You know, the number of people that are actually working in the economy. Now, I should say that some of these are going to potentially change the long-run aggregate supply curve as well, but we want to focus on these short-term fluctuations. If you had an increase in the labor force, you will tend to have a shift out of the supply curve. You have more resources, more labor resources that can be used. So that could be because of immigration. That could be because of an increase in labor force participation by women. It could be because there were people that had been out of the workforce for whatever reason, have decided to come back in. But if you have an increase in the labor force, shift out of that short-run aggregate supply. Should be clear that if you have a decrease in the labor force, that short-run aggregate supply curve shifts to the left instead. At every price, lower output. So again, when we think about a shift at a particular price with increased labor force, you would get the same, at the same price, you'd have more output. At a smaller labor force, and the same price, lower output. Okay. Changes in technology, and let's talk about really improvements in technology. It's not often the case that technology deteriorates. Let's imagine that you have improvements. That's going to make, at every price level, more output is going to be able to be made. Shift out in that short-run aggregate supply curve. Resource availability. And I think a good example to think about this is, for example, petroleum. The international economy periodically has political problems that can result in disruptions of oil supplies. If you have a problem in Venezuela, a major oil exporter, or a problem in the Middle East that it would, say, close the Suez Canal or the Straits of Hormuz, you would have a fall in the country's ability to produce goods because they don't have one of the critical inputs for a modern manufacturing economy. Now, when we talked about production functions before, we had just capital and labor and technology, but you should think of that, you clearly have inputs like oil and other critical inputs for many processes. So it's not just labor and capital and technology, it sometimes can be these inputs like petroleum. You also have effects today because there's been a change in the expectations about prices in the future. And again, think about this from a standpoint of a firm deciding whether or not to produce something and bring it to the market today or in the future. If you expect prices to go up tomorrow or next year, why not wait? If you think you'll get a better price in real terms, and what you can the profitability associated with these products, you might as well wait. So an expectation of inflation in the future shifts that short-run aggregate supply curve to the left. If you think prices are going to fall in the future, by all means, get it out there in the market today, shifting the short-run aggregate supply curve to the right. So these are some of the things that can cause a change in short-run aggregate supply. We will put that together with aggregate demand and see how we can model and explain changes in the economy in the short run and what government policies might do to change that economic outcome.